Well, the real question is whether the Congress goes through with the stimulus package. The Fed has more or less said that they're maxing out in terms of what they can contribute in lower interest rates. The banks are awash in cash because they don't have enough borrowers that they feel that they can trust, and it's up to the Congress to go into play with fiscal stimulus. And Congress, as we know, is fighting amongst themselves, and it looks sort of 50-50 at this point that we'll get a stimulus package before the end of the year. So that being said, Chinese exports to the United States have been relatively strong, but a lot of that has been related, like at 35%, to health measures. So it's not necessarily driving a lot of the economy. So I think Chinese stocks are going to go sideways for the rest of the year. They've had a huge bump because of the ability to clamp down on the virus. And the tech sector is doing very well, as we all know. And the state-driven sector is getting a lot of cash. But a lot of the other companies and the banks are looking a bit weak.
And Andrew, another thing you've highlighted in terms of watching potential red flags in China is this fact that corporate financial risks are rising. We've seen various measures out of Beijing in the last weeks or so to try and clamp down on some financial risks. But where do you think we stand today, and how much of a concern should this be to investors?
Well, my big worry now, as it's been for a while, but it's accelerated, is the property sector, because there's been a huge clampdown on the shadow banking market in the last couple of years that has meant less cash for property developers because they were big consumers of that money. And now the PBOC has been, the last 6 months, has been basically telling developers, look, if you've got too much debt, you can't borrow anymore. So there's starting to be a significant rise in property defaults. It hasn't impacted property demand yet, which is still quite strong. So maybe they'll be able to ride it out. But if the developers are going under because they can't get their projects going and there's concerns about their cash flow, I would expect that to affect the demand side at some point. So that's a big concern. Corporate debt in general is quite high, but so far it's been sustainable.
And good morning, Tanvi, joining in this conversation. On U.S.-China, at least as far as the relations are concerned, you believe the relations will continue to be stable until 2021 unless there is accidental conflict in the South China Sea. How worried are you of the risk of a miscalculation there?
Well, the Trump administration is not terribly coherent in its Asia policy. I mean, they've been very aggressive in pushing back in the South China Sea. I kind of think it's justifiable, but this may be a difficult time to be doing that. So I'm worried about a flashpoint where there's an accident between an airplane and a ship. I think that's unlikely. The bigger issue is that right now the Trump administration is consumed with domestic issues, mainly the election and the replacement of the Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader. So to some degree, China has become a sideshow for them. And instead of pushing that as their big narrative, they realize that a lot of Americans just are past that. 6 months ago, that was a big deal, and they can use that to try to get elected. So I don't think China's that important right now. So I don't expect a lot of flashpoints.